Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third Mindful November workshop. I'm so excited to see all of you. My name is Carly, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Southern Alberta Jubilee Auditorium. Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge that we are gathered all over the province today from Treaty 6, 7, and 8 traditional territory. I myself am here in Treaty 7 in Mohkinstsis, which is known as Calgary, and I wanted to take a second to honor and acknowledge that the land that I live and work on is not land that belongs to me, and I am aware of that every day. And I think it's important that we all take a time in our days to be grateful and reflect on that. We are going to get started in just 1 minute. I want to let you know that this is a live video, so you can pause it when you need to and press play and join us again. I know there's a lot of people who are having trouble getting on with us today because Eventbrite is letting us down. That's okay. They'll be fixed, and you can join us when you get here. If you have any questions for me or for Paula or Michelle, please pop them into the chat on YouTube, and I will get them to Michelle and Paula at a good time. Other than that, that's it for me. So I will see you all very soon. Michelle and Paula, all you.
Hey, thank you, Carly. Get the frogs out of our throats.
Hi,
welcome
thank you, Carly.
Everybody. Michelle there.
Hello, Paula there.
Yeah. Here we are. Okay, so thank you so much for having us, Jube School. We are always excited to mindfully create with you and have this opportunity to reach so many across this province, and acknowledging the treaties that we have engaged in the land that we are on. Okay, so being that this is Mindful November, we just wanted to remind you that you can connect with us on our Instagram, Creative Wellness Program Plus. And there's other ways to connect with us too on the websites and such. And Carly will be sending that information out at the end of our workshops. So if you want to continue this work with us, we would love to have you. All right, we're going to get into the discovery of the messy middle, finding your way in the turning point. That's today's workshop. Have you ever found yourself in the messy middle? It's like that feeling when you're like in the middle of something messy. It's like a new project, a new painting, a new habit. It can feel super vulnerable and leave you wondering, why did I ever start this? I just want to quit. So this messy middle, it's like the turning point. It can feel difficult to see yourself through to the end. The only way to the other side is to trust and to continue, even though you just want to skip through it without acknowledging you're ever in the middle. So today, you're going to learn how to stay curious in a creative mark-making workshop, writing and layering, even with a bit of a mess. So we're going to create an art thing, and we're going to use a variety of supplies. And I just wanted to talk to you about those now. So you can take a moment to gather these as I'm listing. So we're going to need 2 types of paper today. So if you have something like cardstock or watercolor paper, as you can see, we have an art cam. So we'll be flashing things on here for you to watch and engage with. So something heavier like that would be great, as well as some copy paper. And that's just something thin. And if you don't have the heavier paper, that's totally okay. And this is a great opportunity, this particular class, to start on a project maybe that didn't go somewhere that you felt completed with. So today, my cardstock or my watercolor paper has a bit of a rose that a young friend of mine created. And so today, it's going to be a bit of a collaboration with her previous art. So just thinking about upcycling your previous artworks as we go into this workshop, it's a great way. Okay, so now, other supplies, of course, that's just the paper. So paints. So I brought out 2 types of paints that you might have in, and if you don't have paints, that's okay too. This is your standard sort of watercolor paint, and I've just spritzed it with a bit of water before we started class. This is liquid paint you might find at the dollar store or the craft stores or your art stores. So those are pretty accessible paints that you could use. We also would like you to have some crayons or oil pastels, something fun and tactile that we can play with at the beginning of our workshop. Because we're using paint, you might want to have some water handy and a variety of brushes. If you only have one, that's okay too. I've picked different sizes and shapes just to give you an idea of when we say variety, you could really look at sizes and shapes. And a little rag to wipe off your paints. In particular, we'd love if you did have a black and a white paint today. And again, if you don't have it, we'll make arrangements for you as we're giving the exercises if you don't have those supplies on hand. And like Carly was saying, you can always pause and gather the supplies or deepen the work or just to like re-listen if you need the instructions again. Okay, now we got the supplies, right, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about mindfulness. We talk about Mindful November, and maybe you've had a chance to discuss this in your classrooms or at home with your friends, colleagues. So thinking about what mindfulness means, take a moment and just kind of think, what does that mean? What does it mean to be mindful? So to us, it means listening to how we are feeling in the present moment. How do our body parts feel? And then responding in a purposeful way to bring a sense of calm.
Beautiful. Mindfulness means paying full attention to something. It means slowing down to really notice what you're doing. Being mindful is the opposite of rushing or multitasking. When you're mindful, you're taking your time. You're focusing in a relaxed and easy way. You're not thinking about the past or thinking about the future, what's to come. You're noticing and relaxing into the present moment, to the here and now.
There are many ways to practice mindfulness, and the more you practice it, the easier it gets. Some examples you might think of or be reminded of are like yoga and stretching, meditation, deep, slow breathing, and when making art. So when I'm making art, I find that I can really get hyper aware of how I'm breathing, what I'm thinking about. I really slow down as I'm painting or sketching. Often I feel like I do that when I'm listening to a podcast or taking a class. You might do it in your class as you're listening to your teachers. So you're doodling maybe in the margins of a book just to keep yourself calm and focused on what the teacher is saying.
Art and play, as Paula just said, are wonderful ways to practice mindfulness and to learn to take care of yourself, to soothe, to regulate your nervous systems. So this can help with challenging emotions like sadness, anger, fear, worry, as well as anchoring in and mindfully focusing on more joyful experiences and emotions. This workshop is one way that we can practice relaxation and mindfulness, to regulate our emotions, to soothe and ground in the moment, to connect to our bodies and our senses, being playful with art materials.
Yay. So let's get some more play on as we talk about the inner critic. Do you know what your inner critic is? Like, we talk about the inner critic in every workshop, whether it's with kids or with adults, because we find and we know our inner critics really well. We even have sort of pet names for them, and it may change over time too, because you get a relationship with them. So this inner critic sometimes gets louder when new things are happening or challenging things like creative time, because you're really being seen, and your little inner critic is like, I don't know if that's any good, and compares you to the person next door. I don't know if you should be doing that. You look pretty silly. So sometimes that voice keeps us safe, and sometimes it challenges us and keeps us small. And so when we're doing creative stuff like Mindful November, we want you just to mindfully and playfully tuck that inner critic away for this workshop. But make sure you grab it on the way out, because our teachers don't want us to leave their inner critics all bundled up in their classrooms, right? No. So Michelle, do you have an inner critic?
No. Yes, I absolutely do.
See, it tricked you. Can you mindfully find a place to tuck your inner critic away today?
Yes, I have a plastic white watering can above, and I'm going to tuck it in. There's a hole in the top so it can peek out, and I can kind of notice it peeking out. I'm going to just gently tuck it back in. It can have a little swim. There's a little bit of water in there.
Like give it something to do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Keep it busy while we're being mindful. Okay, so my inner critic has just leaped into my iPad case, and it's got a magnetic closure. So I can tell when it is creeping out, and I'll just mindfully place the lid back on there. But with the magnetic closure, I don't think it can get out today.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's sealed in.
Yeah, it's sealed in.
Yes. Thanks, Paula. That is something that we, as you said, we practice frequently when we're just day to day and before going into creative mark making, like we're going to do today. So for the first part, if you attended last session, it's going to be a similar beginning, grounding, connecting to materials, a bit of a guided meditation. And so it's another way to practice, to continue the practice. And this might be the first time doing it, so welcome. So a little bit of setup notes, and you will see the art cam will be demonstrating as I share. So take down your watercolor piece of paper, or if it's the cardstock, or if you just have a copy piece of paper, or maybe it's a half finished piece of art, which I think you so beautifully invited today, Paula. And so you'll want to tape that down, just the four corners, to your surface, to your desk or table, wherever you're sitting. If you have tape, it just helps it from moving all over the place, especially for this this beginning invitation. And then I'm going to invite you to choose, or just to have, they might already be at your table, 2 crayons, as Paula mentioned, or oil pastels. So whatever you have. I chose 2 yellow, different shades of yellow. If you have a choice, really just trusting in what feels good, what colors are speaking to you in the moment. And sometimes it takes a minute. Like today, I was looking at mine and it took me a minute to be like, okay, these are what I want today. And just trusting. And also, if you've been given 2 crayons, just noticing the colors and noticing what you're seeing. And maybe they're colors that you would have chosen, or maybe they're different. And that's kind of interesting in itself. So starting off with 2, whether it's a crayon or an oil pastel, and Paula's starting to show you just peeling the edges if there are any papers around. I pre-peel the edges of my oil pastels just so that when I'm working, I can use all the surfaces of them. But you could just peel a little bit of the tops away so you have lots of material to use. Another invitation before we begin is just to try to be silent throughout the art making components of this workshop. There'll be lots of time and invitations to connect and to share and to verbalize. But as you're connecting with materials, just trying to go inward a little bit. And there's definitely a place for creating and chatting alongside. And this, just maybe thinking about this a little bit differently, a little bit mindfully. So you might be noticing the materials and how you're feeling them, and you might be hearing things like we're going to be playing a little bit of music here and there. Maybe it's subtle sounds in the rooms that you're in, like there's a fan, maybe something outside the window. Just kind of noticing as you're going inward today. That's set up. Okay. So I'm just going to switch, talking about music before we begin this invitation. Start a little bit of gentle music. Okay. So I'm just going to invite you to sit or stand, however feels comfortable for you, and just kind of get yourself acquainted to what feels good in this moment. So that might be moving back. I just moved back in my chair a little bit, noticing the back of the chair supporting my back, and just acquainting yourself to feel comfortable for the next few minutes of this guided meditation and visualization. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze, which just means not staring intentionally around, but just kind of softening that kind of comfortable stare that we all do. And when you close your eyes or soften your gaze, giving you permission to open your eyes at any time that you would like, and just kind of checking around, getting back into the present, noticing what's around your space, and then you can close them again as it feels comfortable for you. So really, really just noticing what feels good for you. So as your eyes are closed or your gazes are soft, noticing your feet planted on the floor. And I always like to start by inviting you to wiggle those toes. Just notice that energy, that connection, your feet to the ground, connected below to the earth. Just noticing that gravity is holding them down. We're just going to do a little bit of a body scan. And I'm just going to invite you, if you haven't already, you might need to open your eyes again, to put your crayons or oil pastels in your hands, so one in each hand, and just hold them as we do this body scan. So I have them in each of my hand, and I'm going to go back to my feet. And permission to move your body. You might kind of sway or subtly shift your weight, or you might feel comfortable coming to kind of a still center as we do this. Just trusting in whatever feels right for you in this moment. Beginning with a few breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. We're just going to slow our breaths down. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Through your nose. And this time, as you're breathing out through your mouth, just breathing out any of that extra air that needs to leave, to let in new, to create space for new. And then just letting your breath come back to its natural pace. So starting again at those toes, those feet, just having an awareness as we start to scan upward. Noticing your toes and your feet. Going up your legs, your calves, up to your knees. We're not changing anything. We're just noticing, just awakening, noticing our bodies in the here and now. We're going to continue up our knees, up the rest of our legs, our thighs, our hamstrings, our bums, our lower backs. We're just mindfully noticing our bodies. Again, we're not changing them, just noticing that they're there. Going up your lower back and your lower bellies. Up to your chest, your upper back. Just continuing to breathe as we scan upward. We come up to our shoulders. Maybe we do a few gentle stretches, maybe up and down, or maybe we do some circles. Whatever's feeling good for you in this moment. Maybe it's subtle, just noticing. Maybe it's more intentional movement. And when you settle your shoulders, just creating some space between the bottom of your earlobes and the top of your shoulders. Just noticing that space as you continue to breathe. And coming to our necks, and maybe we do some gentle stretches from side to side. And just trusting you'll know what feels good. Maybe it's subtle again, maybe it's a bit more of a stretch. We could do a couple circles with our nose in the air one way. We continue to breathe. Maybe a couple circles with our nose again the other way, which just allows a gentle stretch of the neck. Again, we're just noticing, we're not changing. We're not forcing ourselves to move in a way that doesn't feel good in this moment. We're going to keep scanning up to our faces, our jaws, a place that we carry a lot of tension and tightness. Maybe your jaws were clenched, and we're just going to relax them, soften them. Notice the muscles in our faces. Maybe our eyebrows were scrunched down. We're just going to soften. Just continue noticing all the way to the tip of your head, forehead, your temples, back of your head. Just having an awareness. Continuing to breathe. Then we're going to go on either side of our shoulders again. Scan down our arms. Go from the top of our arms, just having awareness. I'm kind of thinking about one and then the next, and then kind of at the same time noticing both. There's no right or wrong, just noticing. You're scanning down your arms to your elbows, your forearms, down to your hands. Noticing the materials that are in your hands, the crayons or the pastels. Maybe rolling them between your fingertips. Noticing their texture. How do they feel? Noticing their temperature. Maybe they've warmed up a little bit as you've been holding them. Maybe they feel cool. Maybe they're starting to warm up as you're rolling them between your fingertips. Noticing the weight, how heavy or how light they are in your hands. So just having an awareness of the materials and how they feel. With your eyes closed or your gazes soft, I invite you use your materials in the air in front of you. Start playing the rhythm or emotion that feels good. And you can experiment. Maybe it's a small movement or rhythm. Maybe it's a big, expansive, your full arms are moving in front of you. So just trusting what feels good in this moment, what rhythm or motion feels good. Maybe it's lines or circles, or maybe it's a little bit more abstract. I'm just trusting that you'll know what rhythm or motion feels good in this moment. When you find that, just continue doing the rhythm or motion in repetition. Just noticing what feels good in this moment. Continuing to breathe. When you find that rhythm or that motion, your eyes closed, or your gaze is soft, giving you an invitation to land that on the paper below. Maybe you need to peek to get yourself acquainted, and then you can close or soften your gazes again. And just landing that rhythm or that motion on the page below. Noticing what it feels like for the materials to touch the paper. Maybe noticing the sounds that you hear. Maybe they're subtle. Maybe they're not so subtle. And playing with that rhythm and motion. Again, it's okay if your materials break as you're doing this. You can push them aside and keep using the broken pieces. One of mine just did. Playing with pressure. So how hard can you push the rhythm or motion that you chose? And then how light can you push, with still connecting your materials to the surface, to the paper. Playing with size. How small can you make your rhythm or motion on your paper? And then allowing it to grow and seeing how big you can make it to feel like you're still on the paper. Just noticing the feelings. Playing with speed. How fast can you do your rhythm or motion? Noticing the sounds. Slowing it down to see how slow you can make these marks on your paper. Just noticing the difference in the feeling, in the sound, what your senses are picking up. I'm going to invite you for another minute to play with this rhythm or motion. Allow it to change if it wants to change. Maybe it's taking you in a different direction on the paper. Maybe it wants to stay the same, just trusting, following wherever it takes you. And if there are other thoughts that pop up as you do this, which is natural to happen, just noticing those thoughts and letting them pass by, like cars going by in traffic. We wouldn't run out and stop traffic. We would just let them drive by. So we're going to do that with our thoughts, just noticing them come in, letting them leave, letting them drive by, and bringing our attention back to the materials, and to the rhythm and the motion. So just taking 30 more seconds, following wherever the materials take you.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, so just inviting you to open your eyes if they're not already open, or just refocusing your gaze. And just take a moment to notice the marks if you haven't already. Reacquaint yourself with your space if your eyes were closed.
Coming back. Thank you. Well, I really filled up my page today. Something to notice that every time we do this, it can turn out different. So we're going to get messy and we're going to have fun now. And I feel like I have staged messy on this. Lots of scribbly fun. So let's have fun with paint first. Okay. So if you have paints, we'd love for you to set them out now. And Michelle has a beautiful rainbow selection of paints there. And I, like I said at the beginning, I have this and I also have the liquid paint. So I might even use both today. And just reminding us to remove the black and the white from the 3 colors that we're going to pick. So just taking a moment and selecting 3 colors and just notice what you're drawn to. Trust your impulse, trust the urge to select that color and try not to question it. And if you hear the questions, remind that little inner critic to tuck back in his spot or her spot or their spot, right? So selecting those 3 colors, if you have a paper plate or a palette, this would be a good time to select it. if you're working with loose colors. And if you're working with a palette, just mindfully know that you're selecting something from your tray, okay? Remember, leave out the black and white. So as we wake up our paints, I like to start with a little bit of water on my paintbrush, a little bath and a swish, and then a tap, tap, tap on my paper towel. And as you wake up the first color, and you're going to start inviting what we call mark making. And so this is just really finding a way to make your mark, not having to make anything in an outcome kind of way. So just finding pressure, finding the speed, enjoying the color or the colors, and just finding ways to move that paint in a marking kind of way. And we're just going to take a few minutes for each color. You can go back in and out of the color. You can add some water like the art cam is showing you. And I'm using my non-dominant hand. That means not the hand I use typically to draw with. And so sometimes inviting that non-dominant hand to your painting allows you to access that part of your mind and brain that don't quite know how to be perfect. So it's a fun way to get creative, loose, and messy. So just take a few minutes and feel the speed, the color, the brush strokes, and make your mark. Tracing over previous marks, perhaps, from the crayons. Michelle's just going to put on a little bit of music for us to enjoy. No right or wrong, just trusting your nudges where you want to fill anywhere as you enjoy your marks.
So if you're doing this live, just taking another 30 seconds or so to finish up whatever colors or fun messes you're making with your colors. And if you're in your classrooms, you can take the few minutes that Paula suggested as well. You're muted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The sunshine is coming in my windows and I'm really enjoying the painting. So as we come to a close of the color areas, and you can see I'm just dancing this brush all over my painting, just wanting to fill up the space today because I want to be messy. So we're going to take the white paint next. Now, again, if you don't have white, maybe you're going to pick a color that isn't represented so far on your paper, and you can just use this as your stand-in. I'm going to use a liquid white because it has a bit more opacity, like it's more opaque, right? It'll cover more. So I'll show you. I'm going to put out about a nickel's worth or a loonie. We hardly use money anymore. maybe a maybe a thumbprint amount. So now with the white, we want you just to sort of slow down your brush and mindfully mine out little moments in your art piece, and just finding little moments where you feel like a little bit of quiet from the white or the neutral color you found, and just enjoy eking out some spots. And as you'll notice on my piece on the art cam here, it's blending with the wet colors below, and that's okay. I'm letting the mess happen. I don't know where I'm going, and I don't need a plan. I'm noticing how I'm feeling about that. So we're going to give you a few more minutes to just find the loops and then moments in your painting that you want to add white to. Okay, our sound has come down, meaning we need to move on. And if you're in your classrooms, and you can pause until your participants all catch up at this stage. And if you're live with us, just notice that it's okay to pause where you're at, okay? So the next color we're going to work with is black. And again, if you didn't have the black, that's okay. Use the darkest color in your palette that isn't represented in your current work of art. So using the black to contrast what is there, maybe like the white was creating sort of some spots of calm and whatnot, maybe the black is going to accentuate some spots that you would like, maybe to cover up, or maybe to just make a new pattern on top of. So maybe look around your space and look for a geometric shape, like a line or a circle that you're drawn to, and finding a way to represent that. Just taking a minute or two and adding a bit of black to your pieces.
Ooh, getting so into that. Thank you, Paula. Amazing.
Yeah, me too.
I have quite the mess in front of me. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we now invite you to pause your process for a moment, because I feel like I am in process. So this is a neat time to pause. Taking a couple minutes to notice this point. This is the middle of the art process. So we're talking about messy in the middle here. Pause and take a few breaths as you look at your art and think about what you're noticing. This next invitation may be helpful or it may be challenging for you at this middle point. Know that it's okay to feel exactly as you are in response to your art. The invitation is to take the tape corners off if you haven't already of your art. Wow, I'm just looking at your marks, Paula. Wow. And the invitation is to rip up, I said it, rip up your art into small pieces. So noticing the feelings in response to this invitation. This is the middle. Some things to consider as part of this invitation. Maybe you need to take a few seconds or minutes even to say farewell. You may have felt, you may be feeling attached to your piece. Yeah. Give yourself the message that you can get there again, that you have the path, that you got there right now. Or maybe you're ready to say good riddance and you're already ripping. Maybe you've just started to rip and that invitation was like a breath of fresh air for you. Giving yourself some kindness, care, and permission for all the responses to this invitation of ripping and as you rip. Maybe it's really fun and you're beginning to embrace the messiness of the ripping. Trust that you'll know how many rips to make, how many pieces to rip your art into. So taking a few minutes, you can pause again to rip, and then we'll come back for the next invitation.
And I just remembered something that we might have forgotten to mention at the beginning, which is glue. You'll need glue. So teachers, if you're watching this, just know that we need glue sticks, or liquid glue is fine too for the next step. Wow, that was so much fun and a little bit scary and a little bit like I didn't know where I was going and a little bit of saying goodbye to the old piece and happy to let go of some of the spots that I wasn't in love with. So I went through all the emotions. Our next invitation is to arrange this now on a new piece of paper. So taking that copy paper that we suggested you have at the beginning, and it can be any kind, any size. Michelle and I both have just an 8.5 by 11 sheet and our watercolor paper in a mess in front of us. So having your glue handy and nearby, we're going to arrange this into a composition. So a composition is, and I feel like I'm just going to do it. Michelle, jump in and tell us what a composition is.
Yes. So I like to use the example of like when you're taking a picture. So likely that's on a cell phone or an iPad, maybe, or maybe you have an old school camera. But you think of the frame and how you're arranging the picture. So if you're wanting to take a picture of like a tree and a person standing beside the tree, you're taking your frame and you're framing them into the four corners. And if you want to change the composition and move and just get the tree, you'd move your frame slightly over. So on four corners of a piece of paper, the composition is how you arrange the items within the frame.
Okay, thank you for that awesome explanation of composition. So allow yourself to be curious and sort of interview as you see the art cam happening right now, as I interview which pieces are going to fit on my smaller sheet of paper, which is kind of constraining my decisions, right? It's actually making it a little bit easier for me to decide and edit what I want to have in my new piece. So notice yourself in this messy middle, this questioning spot, like, but stay with the process, going through this messy middle. So if you haven't started already, feel free to glue down after you've arranged and decided that it feels right. And trust, collage is the best example of messy in the middle because it's a building process and you don't always quite know what the outcome is going to look like. So it's a really good example of messy middle. So we're going to let you play with this for the next few minutes. And if you are watching this recording, you can give your class about 10 minutes. And on the live session, we're going to take, what do you think, Michelle? 2 or 3?
2 or 3, yeah.
Okay. So
yeah,
go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about the there are often more middles than just one middle. And yeah, and I just thought it was important to kind of say that we can get to these points, especially in our art making and outside of that, where we feel like there's this, like we really were attached to it maybe, and then all of a sudden it just feels messy, right? And then as we're doing this arrangement, this composition, we're kind of coming out of that middle and we're trusting, maybe it feels like a resolution, but then maybe we add a piece and all of a sudden we feel, or a mark or a line, that we're in the middle again. So often there can be more messy middles. And some things that we do, Paula and I, we talked about this, we can maybe take a break, like literally physically walk away, come back with fresh eyes and see, maybe this is finished, or maybe this is another middle and I want to continue on. Maybe we sleep on it. So just knowing that there might be multiple resolves to find that balance within the middles.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay. Messy middle. Okay, so the next stage is inviting a brief written response to the art process so far. So if you have another piece of paper, that would be great. And if you don't, you could even turn this one over or use, oh, thanks for showing yours, Michelle. You could even use the back of one of your ripped pieces if you have a leftover, whatever you find, to do a little bit of a writing. So using the prompt, finding my way in the turning point, the messy middle. So think about the process that you've had thus far and write whatever you're noticing right now. Maybe it's about the whole process today. Maybe it's about something that stood out for you in this process. Or it could be a challenge that you had or something joyful that occurred through this art workshop, creative mindful workshop. Maybe it's about something that you're seeing right now in the piece where it's sitting. Or maybe it's about something that's missing that you haven't done yet, or missing about the original piece that you ripped up. Or is it like how you felt about ripping it up? Just starting to write. Take 5 minutes. If you have this on record, like on a recorded version, and if you're live with us, take about 2 minutes and write. And I just wanted to remind you that when we do these writing invitations, it's not about spelling and grammar. It's not about being proper and correct. It's just about maybe a poetic noticing, a word sauce that you end up finding. But just allow the words and the feelings, the thoughts to take form on the page in front of you. Whatever comes, just trust. So take a moment and share with someone. So if you're in your classrooms, you can pair off into groups or pairs and just sharing maybe something from your writing. Maybe it's something just reflecting about the entire class. But give each other a mindful moment to share and listen to them, and then take your turn. And if you're doing this at home, maybe you can turn to a sibling or a parent and guardian, but just choosing someone to reflect with. And if you're just by yourself, just taking a moment and taking it all in.
So good. Such a great process. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, thanks. Fun.
Yeah. So as we're coming to our close, as we're reflecting mindfully, you might have been sharing verbally or reflecting inwardly, as Paula invited. We've been finding our way through the messy middle, and I sure have been feeling it. Yeah. Again, you may still be in the messy middle. It may not be resolved, and that's okay. Just giving compassion and care and kindness to yourself. It's okay to be in the messy middle still. Just knowing that there are ways to continue on and that there can be more messy middles. Just noticing whatever's coming up for you in your written responses and thinking about this process this morning, this journey that you've been on alongside your class, us, whoever you might be with, and giving the invitation to reflect on one word that is coming up for you in this moment. Maybe it's the same word that you wrote down moments ago in your reflecting. By the way, I love the invitation of writing on the extra bits, Paula. That was fun. Maybe it's a word that's coming up for you right now, and how you're feeling and what you're noticing as you pull back a little bit from the art, from the writing, from the reflecting. Just trusting that you'll know the word that's coming up for you right now. And as you find that word, taking 3 mindful breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, just anchoring that word in. This last exhale, you can think the word or you can even say it out loud after you exhale. My word is trust. So a few more notes as we're closing. To help remember this word, you might want to note it down. You might have said it out loud. You might have shared it with someone else. You might want to use another scrap piece of paper, or maybe it goes right on top of the art. Just having compassion and knowing that it's okay and there is a turning point when we get to the messy middle. Maybe you'll respond to this messy middle you might still be feeling, or this process that you have done, with another piece of art. Maybe it's at school or at home. Just trusting in the creative impulses or nudges that come up and how you want to follow them. Maybe it's some more reflective writing. Maybe it's some more making and ripping and gluing and arranging. Maybe this process will support in your next art adventure, allowing you to be curious, more messy in your art making with the materials. I liked getting my hands messy as I was ripping. There was still some wet paint. And maybe it'll allow you to trust in the messy middle of things. Perhaps it will transfer to other areas of your life, other messy middles when we find ourselves in places that we're not sure that feel messy, not related to art at all. When we're learning and growing, it can feel messy and hard. So for now, trusting in the mindfulness that you practiced in the present today, being in this art process and connecting with yourselves and your voice and your reflection. So speaking of reflection, I'm going to share a few reflective questions that you can pause to deepen a conversation about this process with your classes. And if you're just listening to this live, maybe at home, just to think about, to reflect for yourself. So just noticing, how was that for you? That was quite the journey. How was that? What surprises did you notice while making art or looking at your finished art in the various stages? What challenges might have come up? What did you like about working with the crayons initially, or the pastels, or the paint, or the glue, or the collaging? What was it like to talk about the messy middle and perhaps feel like you were there? What was that invitation to rip like? To create a new composition out of the artwork that you had already been making. If you had more time, what would you do next? Maybe there's a message that's standing out for you in your art. Maybe it's voicing something. Maybe you want to have a conversation. What were some mindful moments in today's process that you had where you felt truly connected to the here and now, to the present moment? And finally, what are some ways that you're going to continue to take care of yourself and practice mindfulness, relaxing in the moment, again, that here and now, both at home and at school?
Well, I think that I really enjoy the messy and the middle because of this workshop. But it was messy. Yeah, thank you. So we are coming to a close, as Michelle said, and we just want to say thank you so much for joining us in this messy middle. And Carly's back on. Yay. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining us again. I'm so excited to see you again next week. And thank you everybody who's watching the video right now or later this afternoon. If you want to share your messy middle work with us, please tag us on social media or email us to the email address that I've been talking to you with. See you all next week.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thanks.